year investigation. So let me just say a few words of introduction. First of all, in terms of our keynote speakers, we're actually honored to have two keynote speakers today who have prepared a joint presentation. That's Ivana Zinovinovic, who's at Boku in Vienna, and Jiali Jin, who was also presenting a case study the other day. Jiali works for the Chinese Academy of Forestry, CAFRI, who has been a very active partner as well in this project. Now, in their keynote, they'll be looking at a number of key points, obviously introducing what we mean by governance and management in the context of urban forestry, looking at some of the key management issues, the actors, meaning a combination of stakeholders and communities that need to be involved, the challenges, of course, and perhaps on the back of that, I hope some opportunities as well, and then a methodological approach. So with that, I should perhaps just add that you also, as participants, will have an opportunity to be part of this discussion today. Just a couple of technical matters. First of all is that this is being simultaneously translated. So you should select whether you want to listen to it in English or whether you want to listen to it in Chinese. And you will find that facility at the bottom of your screen. Also, if you have questions and answers, please do share those through the chat box. And I will be trying to keep a watch on those. Perhaps some of the speakers can answer some of the questions in the chat box, but others we'll save up and we will discuss together later on. I think at that point, I can move on to introduce officially and open the keynote session by inviting Ivana and Jiali to share their screen. And I, for one, am looking forward to their contribution. So, Ivana, I'll hand over to you next.
Yes, thank you, Clive. So I will just... So do you see it?
Yes, it is fine.
Okay. So thank you, Clive, for this nice introduction. Also, Julia from Metropolis. So my name is Ivana Živojinović. I'm working, as Clive said, at Boku University, and together with Jiali, today we will present part of our work that we did in the clearinghouse, which is related to the urban forest governance. We will share the presentation, so I will start and Jiali will continue at about half of the presentation. So as Clive said, we will first introduce some main aspects associated, institutional aspects associated with the management of urban forests. So through guiding you through some basic definitions and key aspects of urban forest governance to some more kind of concrete tools, how we can improve institutional settings. So the primary objective of this presentation is not really to go to different settings that are existing around Europe and China, because this would be too detailed, but it's also to provide you with some essential key points and essential aspects or changes that are needed to perform better and ensure more sustainable and enduring benefits for urban forests. So how we can transform these current governance structures, how we can improve them, and how we can make them work better in different settings. When we talk about urban forest governance, this refers to the policies, regulations, and practices that govern the management, protection, and development of trees and forests in urban areas. Also, from the previous webinars, we saw that urban forests are an essential component of urban environment, and they are effective nature-based solutions that provide numerous benefits, from improving air quality to reducing urban heat island effects, mitigating impacts of climate change, etc. So for this urban forestry system to function, it really needs strong institutional setting that would guide this kind of benefits and provision of all these different services. In many countries, so urban forests are differently managed in top-down manner or bottom-up manner. But what is most important, that this urban forest governance requires collaboration and coordination of various stakeholders, including government agencies, non-governmental agencies, community groups, and individuals. And work of all these interested actors should ensure that urban forests are well managed and protected for the benefits of our generation, but also of the future generations. So when we think of urban forest governance, there are a few key aspects or few points that this governance entails. So first, we should talk about comprehensive monitoring and data collection, which should be a foundational element for the sustainable urban forest management. And this should be a cornerstone for effective planning and management. This, of course, is done in different countries in different ways. And in some countries, this should be, of course, a bit strengthened and better done for the management of urban forest. What is the key point of urban forest governance is developing strategic strategies and plans. So this means documents that should guide management and protection of urban forests. And this includes setting the goals, objectives, targets, and vision how urban forests should be governed, how relevant stakeholders could be involved, and what are their roles and responsibilities, and how all the system should function. And as Clive mentioned also in the previous webinar, this strategic planning is really needed to deliver ecosystem-based approach, which urban forest as nature-based solutions should provide. So looking at the current practices, we found that this is often just done by chance rather than by design or like upfront planning. So this should be a bit changed probably more in the future, so that these strategies and planning is really thought upfront and not just accidentally done. Then next important thing is developing regulatory reforms. So this means really developing forest laws, different codes, environmental laws, which are aligned to each other and which are functioning in the benefits of urban forests. Then establishing institutional arrangements. This means how we can facilitate coordination and collaboration of various stakeholders, how we can create different partnership networks, forms of exchange knowledge and expertise. So all this should be done in a strategic way so that we have involvement of all interested stakeholders, and perspectives of different stakeholders should be taken into account to the governance. So it's not in some contexts this is done really top-down manner, but actually inclusion of various demands and needs toward this urban forest should be taken into account. And at the end, not the last, but very important aspect is also mobilizing financial and technical resources. So this means not just monetary money by governments or something, but also like searching for different and new modes of financing through also involving private sector or joint finances or philanthropic activities for the benefits of urban forests. So urban forests can be steered from different levels. In some cases, national governments are owners of the forests and they provide regulations and governance framework for the forests. This means that mainly state organizations are active in creating this vision and planning documents and laws, that they are responsible for implementing these activities and also gaining finances and creating knowledge exchange and educational elements. What is important is also that that this governance is also related, so it should work across the scales, and these strategies should be aligned with international commitments. So even though if it's run by national governments, it should be aligned with international aims and goals. And we can see, for example, in China, that this is one of the cases where this governance of urban forest is top-down governed, steered, meaning that main authority is the state, and then through different departments of administration, the work is put on the lower level to the city level. This is case also in Europe in some countries, not just in China, but because Europe is quite more diverse in terms of different state organizations, we, except of finding this top-down governed urban forest, we also have examples where regional level is quite important or city level. In some cases, cities are the main owners of their forests, and they are those who have really the ownership of the forest, and they, through different programs and partnerships, manage their forests. We here provided just some examples from our work, like that we identified, like for the regional level, this Marcel Manifesto is important, which is quite subnational initiative for enhancing urban biodiversity, and it also like works on the subnational governments levels. And then there is in UK, we will also have one case study later on, not this one, but similar activities. But there is partnership, for example, in Birmingham from the city and different NGO associations, which are included in developing master plans for the Birmingham forests. So there are different ways how urban forests are governed. And of course, in different settings, this functions differently. This quite much depends on the state arrangement and institutional settings. But what is important that we know that in this urban forest governance, not just governmental agencies should be involved from different levels, but also research organizations, non-governmental organizations, community groups, individuals, and also other stakeholders like media or private companies. So all these actors have some interest in urban forest and can contribute to the better functioning of urban forests. And since these demands are different, we should work together and find the ways how this collaboration and management can function better. And what is important to also realize is that in urban forests, different sectors are involved. It's not just forest, it's also environmental departments, urban planning, transport departments, water management departments. So all these kind of different entities, which so far in many cases works in silos, should work together actually for the benefit of urban forests. Also, local communities and private landowners should play a crucial role in promoting and maintaining urban forests as nature-based solutions, because in many cities in Europe, we have that actually urban forests are the private ownership, either by individuals or by companies or foundations, and they all form this urban forest infrastructure of the city, and they should be involved in the decision from strategic planning to decision making, and then at the end to the management. But this is of course very complex and challenges in many ways. That's why there are different arrays of challenges that urban forest governance face due to this complexity. We divided here them in institutional, social, environmental, and economic challenges. We saw that these challenges are applicable more in Europe and in China to different extents in different countries. What is common that we have environmental challenges in both contexts. Of course, institutional challenges are as well very important. So like from land use conflicts, so urban forests are usually on the spot of different other uses in the city. So this should be somehow, protected. Then from the coordination, collaboration challenges, then data and monitoring is also very challenging, especially in Europe, where each state has its own system. In China, it's a bit different. They have very centralized and a bit better monitoring and overview of the data, but still, of course, there are some challenges in this context as well. Social challenges is how we can provide equity and access to urban forests, how we can engage public, how we can promote more this public health and well-being perspective of the urban forest. And then, of course, and economic challenges are very common in all the contexts. So how we can find more funding and resources for urban forest management, and how we can find some maybe innovative solutions in that sense. So I just introduced some main aspects of urban forest governance, and now Jali will continue with presenting more how this change should be promoted in different contexts, so we have better and more sustainable urban forest governance in future. Jali?
Yeah, thank you, Ivana. Morning, everyone. I'm Jali Jin from CAFRIF. So next, I would talk more about how to improve the effective and collaborative urban forest management based on the outcomes from our clearinghouse project. So firstly, in order to transform the existing policies and practice, new approaches and changes in current governance and management are really needed. This enables cities to adapt to the changing conditions, optimize the benefits of urban forests, enhance the public safety, foster the community engagement, as well as contribute to the overall sustainability and well-being of our whole urban environments. So specifically, integrating the various institutions, departments, agencies, as well as the other sectors such as the forestry, nature protection, urban planning, and tourism, healthcare at the national and the local level to create a coordinated approach can enhance the resilience of urban forests. The collaboration between different units within one institution during the whole progress of UF-NBS implementation is also very necessary. This horizon integration can also promote the internal cooperation to achieve the common goals related to the urban forest as nature-based solutions. Secondly, involving the government agencies and private entities, such as the business, non-profits, and the community groups, to collaborative manage the urban forest and the trees can also really make contributions. In the context of UF-NBS, this model can take many forms, such as the joint initiatives to plant and maintain the urban green areas, public education, and outreach campaigns, as well as the partnerships to secure the fundings for tree planting and maintenance. Finally, the bottom-up involvement also plays a very vital role in building and maintaining the resilient urban forest. It can foster a sense of shared responsibilities and leveraging the knowledge and the resources of residents. In brief, the institutional change for a resilient urban forest really involves a shift in mindset, policies, and the practice to prioritize the long-term health and sustainability of urban forests, especially in the face of the ongoing challenges that Ivana mentioned above. So here, next slide, please. So here we list several specific cases for public-private participant models. For example, the resource compensate project model, which has applied in the urban wetland park project in Meishan City in China. In this case, the government gives the special rights for the contractor and allowed them to implement the project at a certain duration. At the end of the concession period, the authorized investors should return the project to the government, and then the government will continue to manage the green areas and also the wetland. Another case, next please. Another case is the Million Trees project in New York City. It involves the volunteers in activities such as tree planting, tree care, and also data collection on the conditions and health of trees. Next, please. In Vienna, the gardening around the corner is also an example of collaboration between city administration and the local people based on the bottom-up involvement. In this project, the small green areas around the street trees rented free for the local government, community groups, or small companies that are taking care of the planting vegetation and also maintaining them for a certain period of time. In China, especially in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, some really big cities also have this kind of similar initiatives. Then let's think about how to promote the institutional change of urban forest management. Next, please. The most important is to establish evidence-based foundation for UF-NBS. So it is also mentioned in our first webinar. For example, conducting the research to understand the benefits and the challenges of urban forests and also use this kind of knowledge to impact the policy and in management decisions, as well as to engage more stakeholders and collaborate with interdisciplinary teams to evaluate all outcomes. Several tools have been developed to evaluate the benefits that provided by the urban trees and the forest quantitatively and also qualitatively. For example, CESRO proposed the 30-300 rule, which provides a simple but effective guideline for urban forestry and greening program. And iTree is a very famous software developed by the U.S. Department Forest Service that enables users to assess and manage the ecological and economic value for urban forest. It helps the communities, business, and other stakeholders make informed decisions about the management of urban forests and trees. Next, please. So the institutional and social innovations also play important roles on the development of advanced approaches for the urban forest management, which can optimize the surveys, also solve the local environmental and social challenges that tree management faced. The institutional innovation includes the creation of new arrangements and governance structures, which could involve the establishment of new partnership between the local governments, civil societal organizations, and private sectors. The institutional innovation also needs to develop a new policy and legal frameworks to prioritize the urban forest management, and also create the urban forest funds to support the long-term conservation of urban forest and trees. Another is the social innovation. It includes the development of new approaches, practice, and the partnerships that can foster the social inclusion, participation, and empowerment. It could be the creation of the community gardens in urban forest areas for community members to connect with their nature, enjoy the physical activities, or develop the urban forest education to, education, yeah, it's fine. Or develop the urban forest education programs to promote the awareness of the ecological and the social benefits of the urban forest. So actually, both Chinese and the European government and the cities have engaged in the this kind of innovation actions. For example, the Sonier Forest Foundation, it is a non-profit organization based in Brussels, Belgium. It is established in 2014 with the goal of protecting the forest's biodiversity and promoting its recreational and educational values for the public. Another is the Children's Wood. It is a community wood-owned woodland located in the North Kelvin, Glasgow, Scotland. This woodland was previously an unused piece of land, but was transformed into a vibrant community space in 2010 by a group of local parents and residents who wanted to provide a safe and natural place for their children to play and learn. Now it is managed by a non-profit organization that works in partnership with local residents, schools, and community organizations to promote the use of the woodland as a natural playground, outdoor classroom, and community gardens. So in China, next please, the National Forestry Grassland Administration also launched the program of National Forest City in 2004 to promote the urban forest as nature-based solutions and contribute to achieving the sustainable development goals. Also, the next please, the government also collaborates with different experts from based on different research fields to develop a national UF-NBS related database to provide a repository based on big data for a more effective urban forest management between different departments as well as stakeholders in different cities. Next, please. To effectively govern the urban forest through the nature-based solutions, several critical factors must be considered. For example, involving the government agencies NGOs and local communities, while also fostering the regional cooperation, developing the robust planning and strategy development to integrate the policies at different levels, also making the efforts to attract various source financial support and encourage the diverse UF-NBS initiatives. Besides, promoting the community engagement and capacity training also elevate the effectiveness of UF-NBS management. Now, so in closing, let's refer back to the beginning. So the urban forest management is well suited to a nature-based solutions framework due to the wide variety of service that trees provide for our cities and human beings. So all we talked about in this presentation, next please, it will be in our guidelines that will be published soon. And this link, this is the link for the website. You can find the available summaries in this slide through this link. Now we are open for more questions and further discussions. Thanks for your attention. So Ivana can add more if I didn't say.
No,
more.
you did perfectly.
I'm going to jump in here because my job in part is to keep results on time today. And so thank you very much to both Ivana and also Giali. Ivana speaking from Vienna and Giali speaking from Beijing. So with that, thank you very much. I want to encourage people to post their questions in the chat, if you would do so, please. And if our speakers could also perhaps keep a watch on that chat, you can probably answer some of the questions as they come in. We're next going to take a short exercise to give you all an opportunity to participate. So I'm going to invite my colleagues to open a Mentimeter, and you will need to take an action here. Is it now? Let's see. Julia, are you responsible for putting the Mentimeter number up, please? I don't see it.
Yeah, I have shared it through the chat. You have just to enter to the link.
Okay, can you put it back on screen again? And we see you.
Yeah. Just 1 second. My colleague Israel is going to share his screen.
Well, while we're waiting for him to share his screen, thank you very much again to Giali and Ivana for their presentation. I now see the screen again. My screen does not allow me to select anything. I'm not sure if it's working correctly.
Yeah, just 1 second because we are having logistical problems. 1 second.
While you sort that problem out, can I ask a question of Giali, so that we can keep the discussion going? Giali, you've been involved with this now for some years in China. Have you noticed a significant change of approach to governance over the last, say, 5 years in China with respect to urban forestry? Is it now more bottom up than it perhaps was 5, maybe even 10 years ago, would you say?
Yeah, actually, so because when I engage in this kind of research, I do this kind of research from my since 2013. So I thought that's a really big change for the government. Is usually if the Chinese government want to implement a very large scale or very impressive UF-NBS related project, usually it will be the bottom, the top down project first, because it is the fast way to get the funding from the government and to implement a real UF-NBS related project. And then recently, with the development of like the citizen science. Also, a lot of a lot of researchers emphasize that the benefits provided by urban trees is really important, and the government started to focus more on like what kind of benefits that we can get from the trees, because they really invest a lot of money to plant more trees. So they start to think about how we can get the evidence from them. So now the government start to collaborate with the experts from different research areas to learn more, to get more evidence from them. And usually during the last 10 years work, during the last 10 years development, I found the most important thing is the government really collaborates really closely with the experts from the different research field, and the researchers from different organizations and also universities really make contributions to like ask the government to listen more about the citizens' perception, and help them to like hear more like ideas and suggestions from the bottom. So the government also started to think more about how to encourage the citizens to join the whole progress of the urban forest planning and also implementing.
Thank you very much, Jiali. One of my duties today is to keep us to time, so I'm actually going to suggest that we now miss the interactive activity, because I would like us to give plenty of opportunity to our speakers today. So I'm going to now invite Alan Simpson, a person that is very well known in urban forestry. I've worked with Alan for many years. He's also very involved with the European Forum on Urban Forestry, which many of us are. And Alan has been involved with a project called the Northern Forest, which is a region-wide project in the north of England. So, Alan, I'm going to ask you to come in at this point, if you would, please, and introduce over a period of about 5 to 7 minutes, maybe, the Northern Forest Project. Alan, over to you.
Will do. Thank you, Clive. Oops. Let's put that one back to where it ought to go back to. There we are. Right. Well, good morning, everybody, from Leeds and from the Northern Forest. What I'll be going through very quickly is really the launch of the Northern Forest, the early years, an impact which has just been published of the first 5 years, and really potential future governance. Our government in about 2015 set up a thing called the Northern Powerhouse, which I have to be a bit careful, but was a lot of warm words, but didn't really do very much until 2018, when it published its Green Future, 25-year plan to improve the environment. And although you can't read its small print, on the right-hand side of that, it says supporting the development of a new Northern Forest, which we thought, yes. And we had done a little bit of work on that. The start of it was a little bit poetic, really. This was the first page of the published document. But let's plant a thought. We live in a time when it seems as if almost anything can happen. Technology, ecosystems, politics, economics, our everyday habits. Change is ubiquitous. Some change is positive, others less so. That mutability is something we are learning to live with and work with.
I don't hear Alan.
We don't hear you, Alan, at the moment.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. Yes, okay. The initial stuff was very interesting. Our area is changing and we need to respond. So we looked at increasing population, the fact that we had a very low woodland cover, a lot more housing, we had airports and infrastructure, and it was a clear link, which was very good, between woodland cover and economic development. And as such, the government initially responded by voting 5.7 million pounds to get the project on the road. Initially, 4 community forests were part of it: Humber Forest, Manchester City of Trees, which used to be called the Red Rose Forest, Mersey Forest, and the White Rose Forest, as well as the Woodland Trust, which is probably the largest charity that creates woodland in the UK. The very large green area was the government's idea of where the Northern Forest would be, which was a little bit vague, to say the least. The dark green is where it actually started out, the 4 local or community forests, and of course the Woodland Trust acted in those areas as well. And the governance was fairly simple. We had a Northern Forest Partnership Board, which had representatives on it from all the community forests, as well as the Community Forest Trust. Interestingly, each of the community forests also has its own governance. Obviously, it's run by its own partnerships of one sort or another, but it was all coming together. It has to be said, though, that for the first couple of years, it didn't work awfully well, because each individual forest and the rest of it said, well, we're taking charge of our bit. And as ever, didn't want to work together until the money started flowing in. And it started flowing in like you wouldn't believe. I'm not necessarily going to read you through all that, but you can see that we had well over £100 million available. And a lot of that was available to individual community forests. Some of it went through the actual Northern Forest community group itself. And it was nuts, really. You can't really have that amount of money and keep paying for it all. So the initial aims of the Northern Forest were fairly straightforward. First, it was to improve the environment of the polycentric city regions. The city regions as a means of increasing the capacity to attract and retain investment. It was to prioritize investment in green infrastructure programs. It was to develop greenways and access networks across the region, to create green space and habitats, especially in neighborhoods where accessible green space was very inadequate, and to ensure the appropriate management of existing woodlands and environmental assets, which, as we all know, is very important. And the first couple of years, as I say, well, it was slow, but the last 3 years, things improved greatly. And we have just had a 5-year impact report on the first 5 years, and it was quite amazing. It was carried out by Liverpool John Moores University, so it was important that it was by someone who wasn't directly involved. But about 6 million trees have been planted. 302 households were now less than 10 minutes walk away from a publicly accessible woodland. Over 87,000 households in the deprived areas are now within 500 meters of a woodland. A lot of visits to woodlands have been stimulated by the Northern Forest promo, partially as a result of COVID, of course, because people actually found woodlands a lot more interesting to visit than just parks, which were very nice, but were sort of flat and fairly uninteresting. But 3,500 habitats of habitat networks have been created. A lot of sites have been planted, been improvement in flood mitigation and improvement in air purification. 19,000 tons of carbon allegedly been sequestered every year, and the economic uplift following from all this is worth over £43 million per year. And the government has said, yikes, we were right. But the interesting thing is that the Northern Forest isn't just a partnership. It's a series of places. It's building a unique and recognized community forestry partnership made up of government organizations and local authorities, alongside national, regional and local charities and local community groups. It's supporting the establishment of about 50 million trees. And we use the word establishment rather than planting, on the basis that any idiot can plant a tree, but you actually need to know what you're doing to establish it. It's playing its part in building and helping to grow the community forest network, and setting itself challenging targets for establishing many hectares of new woodland across the area. And that, at the moment, in dark green, is the area covered by the Northern Forest. it's changing, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the Northern Forest futures from 25 onwards is interesting. We're planning and started doing a Northern Forest Spatial Master Plan, which will provide an inspiring data-driven platform for the next phase of the forest journey. It will be a critically important period to build upon the existing success and profile, ensuring sustained growth and the continued ability to deliver the Northern Forest collective vision. This spatial master plan will be on an interactive GIS-based tool to target and prioritize impactful action across the geography of the Northern Forest, and be used and referred to by core partners, obviously, but also all local authorities and other statutory bodies, highway authorities, health authorities, local education authorities, areas of outstanding natural beauty, and the national parks that are also in our area in their planning and delivery programs. The key objective is to provide strategic leadership through an inspiring and unified visual representation of the Northern Forest, which resonates with its key audiences and leads to a more support and action for trees and woodlands in providing nature-based solutions. It must also add value to the existing plans of the core partners that are currently in place or in development. So, to conclude, the Northern Forest is the UK's largest and most ambitious landscape scale restoration, climate adaptation and nature recovery programme ever attempted. If you want to shape a stronger and more resilient future, then the challenge is to think beyond the horizon and to connect causes, effects and powerful solutions. And that is why where the Northern Forest one team approach comes in. And that is our one team approach. The top is how things used to be. Every profession, every local authority, even every community forest to some extent, moving in its own direction. Now that has reversed. We have a much better multidisciplinary approach on the basis of, are we all interested in success? And if you want to succeed, then you have to work with other folks to get the success that you want. Interestingly, the Northern Forest is expanding. We have 2 more community forests, one in Cumbria on the west there, which is a lot larger than the graphics show there because politics has changed there recently, and that's expanding. And we have a northeast community forest in Clive's old stamping ground. Don't tell Clive, but there is a third one which is about to be announced, and that's the Tees community forest, which is going to fill in that little area of white between the northeast community forest and the White Rose. All those will be joining the Northern Forest. And so things are moving on very well. The governance of the Northern Forest acknowledges very simply that the future is not some place we're going to, but one we actually have to create. And the paths are not to be found, but we have to make them. And the activity of making them changes both the makers and the destinations. And if you have been, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alan. A very comprehensive presentation and a lot of good stories happening in the north of the UK. I'm sure we'll likely to have some questions. Please keep a watch on the chat and respond in the chat if you can. Okay. So from the United Kingdom, we move straight across to China and to the city of Shenzhen. One of China's largest and most dynamic urban centers. And it's my pleasure to introduce, let me hopefully get the name right, Chao. Chao, I wonder if you can introduce your case study, please, to us. So over to you. And remember, this is a bilingual webinar, so you need to be for those that are English speakers like me, need to be connected to the English channel. Chao, over to you.
可以了吗？可以了。各位 各位专家好，现在我是现户植物园曹华，我介绍一下，就是因为我们中国的情况可能就是都是比较共治的，就是我们很多城市的森林都是生态公益林，所以很多也是国有制的，所以好多造林啊，还有一些林业的改造，基本上都是以政府的投资作为主体，其他那个基金啊，还有其他的赞助啊是作为辅助。这里呢，我就介绍一下我们深圳在17年到21年之间进行的全市性的那个城市森林质量精准提升工程的一些基本情况。我这里简单介绍一下，一个就是我们深圳的大致的概况，还有就是重点，就是我作为项目主持人，执行的，就是在我们全市规划的指导下，对仙湖植物园具体的执行的内容。在16年的时候，就是我们其实从上国家林业局的层面，从上到下都是对我们这个有一个就是从上到下的规划，从对我们这个森林单纯林，就是有一段时间，我们中国其实对森林的破坏还是有点，后面有一段时间就重视，就为了尽快成林，就是种植的其实就是很多都是以单一树种为主的，后面经过阅读。那么多年，我们慢慢的就把那个为了提升我们的整体的森林的生态质量，就逐步都对这些那个单层林进行改造。就是我们这一波呢，是在135国家林业局提升规划的基础上，进行的一些各个层次从上到下的一个行动。那我先介绍一下我们就是深圳市的森林质量精准提升工程的基本情况。其实我们深圳是在比较要那个
没共享屏幕，
你出了点问题。里面那个界面有一个共享。
曹老师，那个曹教授，共享屏幕是在最下面的那个屏幕有一个共享屏幕的点击的，应该从左数到右第3个，应该是。
可以了吗？稍等一下。
应该是从左数到右第3个有一个共享屏幕。
绿色的吗？
对，绿色的那个，摁完之后选择 PPT 的那个屏幕就好，就是啊，对对。
现在可以了吧？
已经开始共享屏幕，双击可进入全屏模式。你们共享的是另外一个屏幕，好像你们是不是有好几个屏幕？
等一下，它这个你这里，它这个有点问题，稍等一下。
对，就是可能你们共享屏幕要跟那个腾讯的那个一样，就是你们先那个退出那个不要共享屏幕，先停下来，完了之后你们再选一个你们 PPT 选上的那个地方共享屏幕，或者如果你们不好弄的话，我有收到你们的那个邮件，我这边来放这个 PPT 也行，我可以帮忙做共享。
主要是现在这边电脑卡住了，线上
Maybe
我们
it's
现
better
在有点
if
卡。
we share your presentation.
You have the presentation, Julia. If so,
Okay, I
please
have
the
it.
presentation and
I'll share it.
they can speak it. Yeah.
对。
You just will have to tell me when to.
曹教授，您看，就是主办方这边来共享屏幕可以吗？
可以的。
您只要说一下，他们就会下一页，他们会播放。
Don't worry, I'll have it.
那要重讲吗？前面？
不用，就是不用，
那
就是接下去讲就行。
那我就介绍一下深圳的那个森林质量精准提升的那个概况，先介绍一下。就是说我们深圳主要是面积其实也不大，只有1990多平方公里，森林覆盖率大概还不到40%。但我们就是要做这个工程的时候，我们是请了专业的那个林业公司去做一些相关的，对我们全市进行了调查，就是对我们的我们深圳的森林面积，还有就是有一些低效林的面积，还有一些入侵的微柑橘的情况，都做了一个全面的那个调查跟有结论。然后在这个基础上，我们就是在全市的层面是做了一个我们深圳市的森林质量精准提升工程的一个规划。然后我们这些下面的有好多个10几个那个基层单位，就是在这个上面的总体规划的指导下，去根据各自的特点去进行各自的那个规划设计。下面呢就是具体的可能就是因为有10多个单位，它就用分配到各个单位有多少工程量，还有一些大概的投资额，让我们具体每个单位去实施。那具体到我们这个森林呢，就是它的主要的时间是开始时间是。就是规划是2017年7月完成，然后我们开始时间基本上是从2017年8月，就是下面各个基层单位就开始启动这个各自的任务相关工作。那我就介绍一下具体，其实我们香湖植物园是怎么实行的。就是一个就是我们就是依据着深圳市的规划，然后我们也是收到了那个全市的任务以后，我们是在2017年8月就启动了这个方面的工作。在这个启动工作中，我们也是邀请了一些林业的规划设计单位去做我们整个仙湖的3D 的背景林调查。因为我们香湖其实除了专类园跟我们核心区在一个比较平缓的地，3D 还是占的比例还是比较高的。主要的就是我们实施的过程也是结合着我们一个植物园的特点，还有一些我们的3D 条件，做了一些几个层次的规划的设计，从方案到初设到具体的施工设计，这样一步步去实施。然后经过了在这个过程中，我们也请了相关的行业的专家，那些对我们的那个各层次的方案都会进行相关的论证。那我就介绍一下，其实如果这样的话，我们屏幕显示的可能有点那个你应该往下翻一下吧。对对，就是我们这个可以那个页面都可以往下，我们可以进到那个仙湖植物园的那个，所以我们就好多具体的工作都是结合着我们仙湖的环境的一些，就好像单纯林对一些台风啊，还有什么对我们的那个林相的破坏，然后我们就通过我们的手段去一步一步去改善它。那我们经过这个5年的实施，其实也有一些我们值得就是也觉得有一些相关的经验可以分享吧。一个就是我们一直都是从开始实施到最后的结果都是显得都是专业的一些服务机构对我们进行林业的调查，还有进行相关的设计，还有一些专家进行科学的论证，还有就是现在已经有一定的效果。那具体因为时间短，我也具体的那个什么很多成果的类的就不在这里细说。那我们现在呢，其实这个事情在21年底已经基本上完成以后，深圳还有我们都在继续进行这个相关的工作，就是现在也是结合我们一些山海连城做一些相关的那些工作的内容。 那我们实施的主要就是结合了我们的科研、科普，还有一些旅游的3大功能，就是对我们植物的选择，还有一些物种保育的要求，还有一些我们对自然教育的相关要求，去不同的打造不同的那个改造那个林地的目标。像我们采用的就结合着我们园区的主要的情况，有些对我们主要的景观区，我们可能会采用一些比较好的观赏的植物为主，一些可能会比较陡的山坡呀，还有一些就会用一些我们乡土的植物为主，有些区域就是说在远眺的地方，我们可能会用一些彩色的彩叶植物，这些不同植物的选择，就是根据实施地点会采用的重点植物会不一样。那我觉得就是基本上说，因为我们都是从上到下的行动，所以我就觉得，在我们实施过程中，其实也会遇到一些问题，就是但我们基本上说，我们这个林业的实施行动，因为可能是整个面积会比较大，所以我们一般都会在实施前都会跟附近的居民沟通，做一些宣传方面的工作，还有就是让市民都是了解我们这部分的工作内容，还有就是在制定方案的时候，也会尽量的保护我们的就是栖息地，还有就是我们注重我们植物应用的时候的，我们结合着我们的一些地域的文化内容这个还有就是就是说还有一个就是我们具体下层的实施部门其实是要根据我们上层的那个规划的总体情况，对我们进行的具体的详细还有科学的设计是还是要作为我们常说的要因地制宜的进行的。在现在呢，我们也是已经倡导了新的行动，就是我们现在深圳正在进行一个叫上海联城丽美深圳的工程行动，现在也是倡导一些我们珍稀濒危植物的回归啊，还有会种一些乡土的珍稀树种，在这5年内，可能我们要计划要种100万棵，可能全市范围内，那我们基本上就这样，除了我们这个做的，其实在具体行动中还是有作为主导，还是有发动植树节，发动我们一些市民啊、企业啊去做义务植树这些活动。其实这个就是说，我们这个行动除了政府主导，从上到下，从各个市民层面都是会有不同的重点、不同的要求，都是会就是唤醒大家对那个关注自然、关注生态的这些行动的。谢谢，我基本上介绍就到这里。
Thank you very much to our colleagues in Shenzhen. And I must say that I greatly enjoyed seeing the photographs. A very beautiful landscape, aesthetically very appealing. And a reminder, I think, to us all that urban forestry as a nature-based solution can be beautiful, as well as something that is environmentally strong, and that we should never really kind of ignore the aesthetics of trees. And this is a wonderful time of year in many parts of the world at the moment. The Americans call it fall, we call it autumn. Here in the United Kingdom, it's a word that has universal currency, and it's a very special time indeed. So thank you to Chao Hua, thank you to Alan Simpson. There's been a lot of activity in the chat, which is great news. It shows that there's a lot of interest out there on the case studies. One question that I can answer myself is that there was a question about guidelines. And indeed, guidelines are something we are indeed working on. There will be a guideline on this topic. There will be 4 guidelines in practice. One of them will be on this topic of governance. We anticipate those guidelines being available in full early in 2024. But one of the slides that was shared earlier today showed a kind of a summary of the main points, so I can answer that question. I'd like to pick up some of the questions that are already in the chat that have maybe not been answered. And I'd like to return, if I may, to, well, it's probably a question for Alan in the first instance. It's very easy, I think, in presentations to put a what in English we might describe as a bit of a gloss on the ease of working in partnerships. But I'm always aware that working in partnerships is also a challenge because, as you indicated, you have organizations that are putting their own interests first in many occasions. Do you have a learning point here? Because I got the impression that you were saying that things had improved over the last 5 years. Is there something in that improvement that would be a learning point for other projects that are being based on partnerships?
That's an interesting question. Raymer asked a question also about how does business communities get involved. The key thing, well, no, not the key thing. A key thing is really being able to move and work in the cracks between people. I haven't always been an academic. I used to work in the new towns, which I won't bore you with, but obviously I am an academic. And I do go to chambers of commerce meetings and business things like that. The only person who doesn't wear a stripy suit or a tie. And it's amazing how when there's confrontations between this, that, and the other, you can sort of point out, well, oi, hang on, you're actually both saying the same thing. No, we're not. No, we're not. Yes, you are. You want success. You want this to work and that to work. And surely by actually working together and getting the quality of the environment, you want investment. Look at all the towns and cities in Europe where key investment is. They're all green cities. And look at some of our places. I wouldn't even bother to turn up, let alone invest. Oh, right. And I think the big difference now has been that urban forestry is not now seen as a cosmetic. It's not something that you add, or when all the other key issues are things, the highways or what have you. It's actually seen much more as a metaphysic, as a first principle. Because if you don't get that right, all the other things that you keep on about, whether it's quality of investment, whether it's public health even, and what have you, you're not going to be able to deliver, old son. So come on, we need to work together. And it's amazing how that has begun to change things quite appreciably. So I think it's also trying to work with folks, but still being neutral, being an academic and being an ex-hippie. It does help to get you into places that otherwise you probably wouldn't, because they look at you and think, oh, they're not going to be a problem. Yeah, let them in. And then once you get the debate going, they start, oh, yes. So that is really what has changed over the last few years. And that is that it's also the other thing is having the humility to learn from elsewhere. And that really is where sometimes, whether it's UF or other things, you can actually bring in examples from other countries and saying, look, you don't want to copy that, but this is what their problem was. This is what they've done.
Thank you, Alan.
Sort of, and people say, oh, yeah, good. So it's also having that as well.
Thank you, Alan. I think I take away from that the message that you need to get in, if you like. You used the word the cracks. It's a word, English is a wretched language because it's nuanced. But I think what you're saying is that you really need to be able to kind of get in to the network that these various partners are part of.
Create bridges.
And create bridges. Thank you for that. I wonder if I could turn to one question that came up about the Botanic Garden. And I think there's a really important post here from Jiali, Chow might want to respond to this as well, about the importance of protecting tree species. Now, one topic that's not been discussed today, but we will be discussing it, I suspect, in future webinars, is the impact of climate change. And climate change is having lots of impacts. We now know that very small changes in climate can have a disproportionately large impact on biodiversity. And I wonder if either Jiali or Chow would like to speak from a Chinese perspective on whether this concern about species conservation in the light of climate change is one of the main reasons that international and government organizations in China and perhaps elsewhere are now taking such an interest in urban forestry as a nature-based solution. Maybe Jiali, you could start, and then Chow could give her feelings as well on this important topic.
曹教授这边讲一下吧，因为主要是就是大家有问，就是说为什么植物园很重要，为什么要在一个地方要建这个植物园？还有就是建植物园有没有一些选择的那个准则？然后从我们这个角度来说，我就回答了一下，说那个植物园是对保护这个当地的这个本土的这个树种是非常重要的。然后Clive 这边的话也是问了一下，就是说他也有个问题，就是在应对气候变化这种全球变化的这个前提下，就我们中国政府在这个物种保护和生物多样性这方面，在植物园针对您这边的这个工作和经验，有没有一些措施跟一些做法？
像我们中国的植物园，其实在那个物种保育方面，其实做的就是很多的，因为我们植物园可能有中国的植物园从中科院系统到我们城建系统，还有一些是教育系统，很多类型的幼儿园不是植物园，结合着那个各地的情况，都会有实施相应的那个措施，对我们当地的那个植物栖息状况啊，还有一些当地的那个植物就是地理特征啊，什么都是有各自针对的特点。像我们中国植物园联盟，其实也是对整个我们中国的植物那个多样性啊，还有各个地方的那个保护的重点对象啊，什么都是有相关的规划的。像具体到我们，因为我们植物园地处的就是我们香湖是在南方地区，可能是我们这边地方也比较多，就是植物园类型也比较多，但我们就是植物园，我们也是结合的我们一些科研，有对我们针对的一些主要的研究类型，会有一些重点的一些植物的保育啊，品种的收集啊，还有针对做一些公众的教育，这都是整个就是说也相关也有研究。我们如果就说物种不够丰富的话，其实对我们整个生态那个指数啊，还有一些相关的物种多样性这些影响都是很大的。所以我们现在都是结合着一些地域性，还有一些区域性的一些植物，或者我们有一些重点的一些保护植物，会做一些相关的研究，是看为我们整个国家的那个植物的多样性，在我们植物园，就是我们香湖植物园做我们应有的那个贡献吧。
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting answer to the question, and thank you also to Jiali. One thought that crosses my mind, given the fact that this project that we are working on is a China-Europe collaboration, is that maybe in Europe we should be doing more to work with the botanical gardens that we have here. I recall that in the 25 years of the European Forum on Urban Forestry, I only recall ever having visited one botanical garden in all of that time as a partner, which I think says something, because we have many like you, have many fine botanical gardens, and they're really very important. So at that point, I would just like to make a couple of final comments from the point of view of the Q&A session. Thank you to everybody who's been responding in the chat. The chat will remain open right till the end of this presentation. So if you have a question you want to direct to one of the speakers today, then please do so in the chat, and they will try to answer. Secondly, I would like just to draw attention to a post that I have just put into the chat, which is the registration details for our third and fourth webinar. The third webinar takes place on Wednesday of next week, and the final webinar, which will be the fourth webinar, on Friday, 1 week today. And you will see the registration details there. Several people have also asked about where they can find out more information about the guidelines and other things. And I think the easiest thing there to do is to go to the project website, from where you will find the links to various resources. Now, the address for that is basically clearinghouseproject.eu, and I will post that also into the chat. We have representatives today who are responsible for the website, and I'm sure that they will be happy to give you further information. In fact, I've seen that Pauline, who's responsible for this, has just posted this. So at that point, I'm going to hand over to Julia, who I think we hopefully now have the technology available to give you the opportunity to participate as we draw towards the end of this webinar in an interactive activity. So, Julia, over to you.
Thank you, Clive. Well, for this session, we had 2 interactive activities prepared, but regarding the time that we have now, we are going to do the first one instead of the second one because it's shorter, and we are looking forward to hear from you. So I'll share my screen. Okay, and I hope that you can see it. Right now, I'm going to start presenting. So the idea is to hear from you. I don't know why it's blank. Wait.
Try again.
Problems of the technology.
Yes, absolutely. What did we do before technology? Paper, it worked.
Okay, right now I have it. Perfect. Okay, so we want to hear from you. What are the key aspects of urban forest governance? So you can enter in the link that I sent you through the chat and answer.
Okay, thank you. So we see the mentimeter.com and the code number that you can use, and we will wait a few moments for the responses. We're beginning to see responses beginning to come.
Actually, really interesting that the first word that appeared was leadership. But yeah, it's actually really, well, it makes sense that the word that is having more presence in your answers is cooperation and collaboration, because we have been talking a lot of that. Clive, would you like to mention on this?
Well, I think it is a theme that has come out through the research project as well within Clearinghouse, is the importance of collaboration and cooperation. And I think that this really is one of the main findings, that if we want to use urban forests as a nature-based solution, we can't do it alone. We need to bring in different stakeholders and different agents of change. The leadership one, I think, is interesting. although I see that it is actually going down slightly in terms of our representatives' importance at the moment. But generally speaking, there does need to be some clear leadership provided. That doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, at least a leadership which is one organization, mainly the local municipality. Sometimes it can be across a board. And I think what was interesting of Alan's presentation was exactly that. Community engagement, that is also coming out quite strongly. This reminds me of something that's quite common in social sciences research when we talk about community engagement, that often we identify two particular communities, those that are local communities, the people who live and maybe work in a given space and are therefore exposed to the urban forest almost all of the time. But also those communities that have a particular interest in a certain aspect of urban forestry, which might be, for instance, a community interested in biodiversity or the plants or the birds or whatever. And I think their interests are also as important as the interests of the people who live there all of the time. What I think is really interesting here is that the comments that we're beginning to receive are very kind of broad, and a lot of them are appearing only once rather than 2 or more times. But we will capture this word cloud, I'm assuming, Julia, so that we can
Obviously, yeah.
We can share it and maybe even present it in the final findings of the clearinghouse.
Yeah, I would add, like, I actually like this leadership, not in the sense of the, you know, leadership by government, by national government, but something, but also in this small scale project, if you really have enthusiastic leader, like a person who is really enthusiastic and engaged and, you know, persistently running for something, then this leader can really run big changes. So in that sense, I would say leadership as a word is really interesting, at least how I understand it.
That's okay, that's fine. And thank you for your intervention, Varna, there. Okay, I think then we're beginning to draw towards the end of this session. I suggest that we leave this on screen for a moment or two while I do a quick summary before or the closing remarks, so that we can finish on time today, because I know we're all busy people. So first of all, what have I noted today? There's been keywords today, and I think those keywords are really important. The word challenge has come up several times today, and I think nobody is in any doubt that the topic as a broad topic of urban forestry, and specifically when we talk about urban forest as a nature-based solution, has got all sorts of challenges. It's got partnership challenges, it has got resource challenges, and maybe even has leadership challenges, just to pick up on the last point that has just been mentioned. I was particularly interested in one of Giali's slides when she was talking about the different types of what I would call tripartite relationships, one of which was private-public participate model. And the relationship between the public, the private, and the voluntary sector seems to be absolutely key for the future of urban forestry. We live for the most part in a world that is now very much based on a mixed economy that includes the public sector, the private sector, and community organizations. And I think that has, perhaps not unexpectedly, but that has certainly come out of our research in the Clearinghouse project significantly, of course. Another word or keyword that emerged to me was evidence-based. And I think this is really important in the context of persuading those who have control of resources. They want to be assured that if they are to spend large sums of money, whether it be in sterling, in euros, or yuan, or whatever currency is going to be is needed, they want the evidence to show that they're going to get the benefits back, the return on investment. I think that's really quite important. The final comments that I have really have to do with where we go from here. I've been, I'm no longer a young man. I've been involved in action research projects now for a long time. And the evolution of ideas is a gradual one. Occasionally there are seismic moments, both in research and practice. But what I would stress is a few things. First of all, I think there is a real importance about preserving and collaboration on an international level. I've really been very impressed today that we've had delegates from Africa, delegates from South Asia, people representing China, of course, people representing a whole host of European countries. And this is something that we need to ensure continues beyond the life of this particular project into future projects. Those sorts of very international learning opportunities is going to be really critical for the future of our planet. And that comes against a backdrop, and I think we would likely most agree, which we live in very challenging global times. I think the second point that I would like to bring out in terms of conclusions is the shift in mindset that has been mentioned. I forget which speaker it was, but whoever said it caught my attention. The shift in mindset, I think, is important. It is thinking about how in the future we can all learn through the processes of doing. Thirdly, a bit of a plug for networks. In Europe, we have the European Forum on Urban Forestry, which is an annual meeting where practitioners and researchers come together. And we've been very pleased in the past to welcome Chinese visitors to that as well. The next meeting takes place in May of 2024 in the city of Zagreb, which is the capital city of Croatia in the Balkans. But equally, there is a network within China. If people are interested in that, please contact Jiali, who will be able to provide you with information. So finally, so that we can keep to our time scale, I would just like to thank the organizers. Thank you, particularly the participants for today. I've seen some quite impressive numbers, so it's excellent that we have that. And I look forward to hearing more from everybody at the third webinar and the fourth webinar beyond. But thank you for your time today. And I think at that point, Julia, we can probably draw this particular webinar to a close.
Okay. Well, thanks, Clive, for doing a bit.
And thank you to all the speakers and the participants. Looking forward to see you next Wednesday.
Yep.
Thank you.
That you will.
Goodbye.
Have a good day.
Bye,
everybody.